Understanding fixed income risk and return. This is a long reading. Here we will start out by talking about the sources of return in a fixed income context. Then there are many sections related to duration. There are different kinds of duration, and we'll understand how these duration measures are calculated. Duration is one of the most important measures of the risk associated with fixed income securities. Most of the duration measures we'll talk about are analytical in the sense that we use mathematical formulas to come up with the duration number. We'll also talk about bond convexity, which has to do with the curvature of bonds. We'll talk about credit and liquidity risk. And the last section is related to empirical duration, where rather than using a formula, we use statistical methods to come up with duration. Section 2, Sources of Return. When you invest in a fixed income security, the total return is the future value of reinvested coupon interest payments and the sale price. Let's say that you invest in a fixed income instrument, and let's say that your investment horizon is 3 years. Say you buy this bond for 100 and you get a coupon of 10%. So the coupon is 10, 10, 10, and you get 100 back over here. The total return is the future value of the reinvested coupon interest payments. The assumption here is that these coupon payments are reinvested and they will have a future value. The total return is going to be the future value of the coupon payments that are reinvested, and we'll see this in detail in future slides. The yield, also called the horizon yield or the holding period rate of return, is the internal rate of return between the total return and the purchase price of the bond, which in my example is 100. So what are the different sources of return? One source of return is the receipt of promised coupon and principal payments on the scheduled date. The other source of return is the reinvestment of coupon payments. When these coupon payments are reinvested, there is an interest income that investors will earn. And finally, potential capital gains or losses on the sale of the bond prior to maturity. We'll now go over several examples from the curriculum which will illustrate these concepts. Let's start with example 1. Here we consider a buy and hold investor who purchases a 10-year 8% annual coupon payment bond at 85.50. So this is a 10-year bond. The initial purchase price is 85.50, and there is a coupon of $8 at the end of every period. So $8 coupon, $8 coupon, and so on. This is the final coupon, and since we have a buy and hold investor, he will also get 100 at the end. If you compute the YTM of this bond using your calculator, where you plug in this present value and then payments of 8, 10 periods, FV100, what you will get is 10.40%. In this example, we assume that the coupon payments are reinvested at 10.4%. If that does happen, then the total return, which is the amount of money at the end of 10 years, is going to be 229.97. Now, where is this number coming from? Out of this 229.97, 100 is simply the principal amount that is being received at the end of 10 years. 80 is the total amount of coupon payments. So 8 times 10. And the balance is the interest on interest. This is the money that is received by reinvesting the coupon payments. And that amount is 49.97. Note that a significant percentage of the gain is coming by reinvesting the coupon payments. Now take a look at example 2. We have a second investor who sells the bond after 4 years. So now the horizon is 4 years. The future value of the reinvested coupons is now 37.34, but we are assuming a 10.4% interest rate again. So at the end of 4 years, the reinvested coupons give us or give the investor 37.34. The price of the bond over here, if it is following a constant yield trajectory, is 89.67. The total return is 127.0158, and given that same initial investment of 85.5, the realized rate of return is 10.4%. This particular bond is following a constant yield price trajectory. What that means is that over time we are assuming that the yield is staying constant at 10.4%. Initially, the bond was worth 85.50, and if the yield stays at this number, then there is a pull to par taking place. Over 10 years, the bond price will come up to the par value of 100. In our example, at the end of 4 years, the bond is worth 89. It is worth 89.668 to be more precise. Now this is not considered a capital gain. If the bond is sold at this price, which is actually the book value or the book price for this particular bond, then a sale at that number is not considered a capital gain. If the bond price is actually above that number, then we would say that there is a capital gain, and this would happen if the interest rates go down. On the other hand, if interest rates go up, then the bond would sell at a price which is lower than this number. Example 3 demonstrates what happens if interest rates go up to 10.4%. So interest rates go from 10.4% to 11.4%. What this means is that all the coupon payments are now being reinvested at a higher rate. So the total return is 236.38, a larger number. And when we calculate the IRR, that is 10.7%. For the buy and hold investor, an increase in interest rate is a good thing because he can now reinvest coupon payments at a higher rate. What about the second investor? Remember, the second investor only had a 4-year investment horizon. Given that interest rates have gone up, the price of the bond will be below the book value. Remember, book value is going up from here, from the discounted amount of 85 to the par value of 100 over 10 years. But if the interest rate is up, then the selling price will actually be below the book value. So that is a loss. What about the reinvestment income? The reinvestment income is there, but it is not enough to compensate for this loss, and therefore the overall return is going to be less than 10.4%. Example 5 now. We are back to the buy and hold investor. The difference is that interest rates now go down from 10.4% to 9.4%. Notice that the reinvestment income is lower because the coupon payments are being reinvested at only 9.4%. Since the reinvestment income is lower, the overall realized rate of return is only 10.1%, which is lower than the original YTM of 10.4%. Example 6 involves the second investor. Remember, his horizon was 4 years, so 0 to 4. This is the reinvestment income, which is 36.8. The coupon payments are being reinvested at a lower rate. 93.79 is how much this investor will sell the bond for at the end of 4 years. And here the investor will be selling at a gain. Remember, if we look at the constant yield trajectory, which is going from 85.5 to 100, at the end of 4 years, the amount at which the investor sells this bond is higher than this number on the constant yield trajectory. That is because interest rates have come down. The overall return for this investor is 11.17%, which is greater than 10.4%. The reason this investor has done well is that the gain over here, the capital gain, more than offsets the fact that the reinvestment income is relatively low. Before we talk about example 7, I want to emphasize the main points that we have seen over the last few examples. When we talk about interest rate risk, there are really two components: the coupon reinvestment risk and the market price risk. And these two risks actually offset each other. And here is what I mean. A bond investor has reinvestment income. So this is the income from reinvesting coupon payments. And then the price of the bond, or the capital gain or loss when the bond is eventually sold. What happens if interest rates go up? If this happens, then reinvestment income is higher because coupon payments are being reinvested at a higher rate. What about the price of the bond relative to carrying value or relative to the value on the constant yield trajectory? There the price will be lower. The question now is, which of these effects is greater? And the answer is that it depends on the investment horizon. If the investment horizon is long, then this effect, the reinvestment income effect, dominates. If the investment horizon is short, then the price effect will dominate. Now I want you to do example 7. An investor buys a 4-year 10% annual coupon bond, and the YTM initially is 5%. The investor plans to sell the bond in 2 years, so at the end of 2 years. Calculate the purchase price for the bond and the horizon yield. So horizon yield is the yield over this 2-year period. Given this 5% yield, you can plug in the numbers and come up with a purchase price of 117.73. This is the purchase price, and we've done enough calculations that I will not do the calculation over here. Hopefully you recognize that this is a premium bond because the coupon rate is much higher than the YTM. Then we are supposed to calculate the horizon yield, assuming that the coupon reinvestment rate after the bond purchase equals first 3%, then 5%, then 7%. What this means is that our first coupon payment will now be reinvested at 3%. the future value of the reinvested coupon will be 10 into 1.03 plus this 10. So that number is going to be 20.3. The price of the bond is going to be higher than the carrying value because the interest rate is lower than 5%. When you do the calculation, you should get a selling price of 113.39. If you calculate the total yield or the horizon yield, that will come to 6.56%. And notice that this number is higher than the original YTM of 5%. And this should make sense because our horizon is short. Therefore, the decrease in interest rate is actually benefiting us. This is essentially what I talked about here. But in my discussion, I talked about an increase in interest rate. Here we have a decrease in interest rate. A decrease in interest rate means that the price will go up and reinvestment income will go down. But since the horizon is short, the increase in price is more than the relatively lower amount of reinvestment income. So effectively, our return is higher than the initial YTM. In the second scenario, the reinvestment is taking place at the initial YTM. So when you do the numbers here, the overall realized return is going to be 5%. And then with this 7% number, what is going to happen is the decrease in price because of a high interest rate is going to be more than the higher amount of reinvestment income. So in this particular case, the total return is going to be 3.5%, which is lower than the YTM of 5%.